Hello, welcome to NEWSPASTY, where we're going to look at Roland Rat on TLDR News. What does TLDR stand for, do you reckon? We'll work it out as we go along. I'll try and work it out.
This video was brought to you by Brilliant. One of the top priorities for Rishi Sunak upon entering number 10 was to simply remain there longer than his predecessor did. And
oh, look, stop, watch, middle. Oh my God, this is going to be one of those unnecessarily overproduced, over the top presenter who doesn't actually say much. It's just like cadences. Let's see. I don't like any of this already.
In this regard, he has already succeeded. However, the fact that this was even a goal in the first place shows just how fractured the Tory party is, and how brutal Tory MPs can be towards their leader. After all, they toppled their 2019 election winner,
but them's the breaks,
and then removed their next leader that was elected democratically by the membership after only...
oh my God, TLDR sounds like the Tories lick dick recurringly, repeatedly. With great vigor. What's that? An R word with great vigor. Anyway, Tories suck. TLDR, Tories love dick rogering. Yeah, I've said Tories love dick rogering. These guys, democratically elected by the 0.03% of the population or something. Oh my God, it's so fake.
Just 49 days in office. Yeah, Rishi Sunak might have lasted longer than the lettuce, but he's still presiding over a pretty significant polling deficit against Labour. And very few people truly believe that he could realistically win the...
Wait a minute. Shall we go back? Right, okay. First of all, you put a CBDC banker in, a CBDC pushing banker in charge so that they can do a few policy changes behind the scenes. So he was always seen as low, but where's this polling from? They haven't said where the polling's from here. They just showed this polling, and it's like these are always like past council elections or other elections. They do the votes, and people give the same as they voted last time or what they think. But when you actually look at the gerrymandered areas and constituencies, this ends up not being that distance. I just don't believe there's that much distance. If Labour think they're polling ahead this far, you wait and watch how close it gets during the election, because Keir Starmer will have to speak loads. All of the rest of them will have to speak loads, and it's boring. They got nothing to say. That polling is just bump. It's always bump.
Polling deficit against Labour, and very few people truly believe that he could realistically win the next election. As such, some Tory MPs have already reportedly sent in no confidence votes to the chairman of the 1922 committee in an attempt to oust him. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the current polling, how this has been affected by recent scandals, why this is enraging Tory MPs, and whether this could cause them to oust yet another.
This is like news with graphics for children. Oh, look, some emoji faces. Will the Tories get rid of Sunak? We'll put the main point on so that you don't have to really think or listen to us, because some people don't like this guy's voice so much that they just mute it. So you could just get a gist. Oh, sad face emoji. Will the Tories get rid of Sunak? And what are you going to say? I bet you they're going to tell us in words and emojis.
Another leader.
The LDR. Tories lick dick relentlessly.
So let's start by taking a look at the polling. As we pointed out many times before on this channel, the Tories have been behind in the polls ever since the beginning of 2022. Now, this was roughly when the Partygate scandal kicked off.
God, this guy though, his face, I can't like him. I don't know. I just don't know. I don't trust him. But all of these news channels, they carefully choose their presenters. They carefully screen them, and they gotta come across in a certain way. They're not allowed to go off script. That's for sure. And the script is obvious here.
And the Owen Paterson scandal, the first of the major Tory MP scandals, also began. Back then, Labour were on average about 5 points ahead of the Tories, a number which only widened to 30 points when Liz Truss became Prime Minister. and has since contracted back down somewhere between 15 and 20 points since Rishi Sunak's premiership.
Oh, yeah. So look at this. Okay, lockdown 1, lockdown 2, lockdown 3. That's interesting. So you see the 3 lockdowns, and you see you see how the Conservatives started dropping down. Oh, people don't trust them. They're angry with them, and always stays roughly the same. And then it goes down, but all of the time, even through some of the worst times, the Tories were still basically above Labour up until Owen Paterson corruption scandal. It's like, oh yes, Liv's Trust PM. It boosted up really quickly, which is hilarious. And Jeremy Hunt becoming chancellor, they put something, and they get to this point, and I tell you, it's not going to be long before that blue line starts going up again and that red line starts going down again, because again, all of these guys have got, all of these Labour guys have got to start speaking, and when they do, and they got to start having pictures taken of them and videos, and they look awful and they act terrible. It's all awful. I used to be a Labour supporter. I was from Labour heartland, Labour all my life. I wouldn't vote any of these parties. None of this system works, and none of it is for you. Oh, this is worked out by Redfield of Wilton Strategies. Thank you.
It began. Now, zooming forward, at the beginning of September, according to Redfield Wilton polling, the Labour Party had a 16-point lead over the Tories. This week, though, Labour's lead has increased to 20 points.
Oh, yeah,
now, one of the factors driving this decline in polling is the reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete scandal.
Oh my God, the reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete scandal, where basically schools are left to collapse. Oh, this is all the government fault. Everybody's fault. All of these guys. Oh my God, this is repeated as well. What people don't realize about this scandal, this aerated concrete scandal, is that you go back 50 years back in history, yeah? You go back to the time Keith Joseph was in charge of infrastructure projects under a Tory government pre-Thatcher, so before pre Ted Heath, so in the 60s. And Adam Curtis did a documentary that includes this, where they basically made a load of they did a big housing. They built loads of housing, like 200, 300,000 houses or flats and stuff, put up a load of stuff. But they had not funded it properly, used crap materials, and they discovered that, like, in an area where you needed 8 reinforcement bolts and stuff, there was 1 bolt, and things were just falling apart. And everything had to, within 10 years, between the next 10 and 20 years, all of it had to be pulled down. So people lose their homes, people lose their stuff because it was so badly made. This is a repeated scandal. It's over and over again. It happens all the time. It's called not investing in infrastructure projects that you promise. Both Labour and the Conservatives are guilty for it because politics is broken.
This all started back in August, following the collapse of a beam in a school, which saw more than 100 other schools closed, after the health and safety executive concluded the RAAC could collapse with little or no notice.
That is brilliant, though, isn't it? That's exactly what you had back in the 60s under Keith Joseph, though. You had a building, and you look at Keith Joseph speaking. He's up there going, rah 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 rah. We're gonna do this, and we're gonna. And then when you actually watch what they did, it's terrible, but no one has held account for it. Do you think that he's held account for anything after? By the time they're retired, they got loads of money and they've done their bit. They've done their bit to shut you up and not do what they need to do while they were in office.
Now, this caused 2 major issues for the government. Firstly, this scandal occurred right as children were going back to school after their summer holiday. Education has already been disrupted massively over the last few years thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Look at this. Education has already been badly disrupted, not because of the COVID pandemic, but because of the policies put in by inept governments during the COVID pandemic, where they looked at a population group that was not affected in anywhere near the same way by COVID. And instead of saying, oh, we should probably just keep schools open, they said, okay, let's go and do the most extreme thing and mess up 2 years of children. The kids that were in school during COVID afterwards they were burning stuff out in my area. They were burning stuff, destroying stuff. They felt completely detached from society because they had been detached from society, and that was a much worse effect than what would have happened if they had gone to school. So this is not, education hadn't been badly disrupted because of COVID-19. It had been badly disrupted because the response to COVID-19 was insane.
Pandemic. So this further disruption in a new school year has gone down particularly badly. But secondly, viewers developed that the Conservatives have had adequate warnings about the risk of RAAC and chose not to act on it. The argument is,
when did it first get introduced? This is it's so terrible. 100% that you'll find that everybody's guilty. That's how it works in politics. Everybody's guilty.
This scandal was preventable and that the Tories failed to prevent it. And there's some truth in it.
Oh, look at these girls, the Tories. They're walking down. Oh, they must be. Is that the guy who's leading the group on the right? Is he got a little Hitler mustache? He looks like a Mexican with a Hitler mustache. There's a guy in braces too behind him as well. Actually, these guys all walking down in a line. That's really interesting. So they're trying to make it a picture about these women. Oh, look, the women are all doing their thing. There's Priti Patel and whatnot, and they're walking along, and they're so cool. And these guys are trying to hide on the side. The third one up is a gangster from the 60s who used to work as it's Jimmy Jones. It's the jazz musician who got suicided in 1960 in one of the nightclubs.
It's two. As Chancellor, Rishi Sunak presided over a 41% annual reduction.
He really does. Ed the Techie on Twitter. Ed the Techie. Follow him. He does memes. It does memes for NEWSPASTE as well. You look on the NEWSPASTE homepage, you'll see a meme, and it'll be an Ed the Techie meme most likely. And look, he does it. A Roland Rat, because that is Roland Rat. He definitely is. Rishi Sunak is like Roland Rat.
In school rebuilding programs between 2019 and 2020.
Unlikable. Put in so that they can have a change of guard, so that Labour can get in eventually. That could be the only reason they put Rishi Sunak in, along with the trying to get in all of the bankers stuff, CBD stuff. It's basically they can self-destruct him because he's so you cannot connect with him. He's a rich banking elite. The working man can't connect with him. They've snuck him in to like without a democratic vote. This democracy bullshit is a Tory hustings democracy. That's bullshit.
Additionally, an investigation by BBC News found that at least 13 schools affected by this concrete were set to be rebuilt by Labour, but were scrapped under the Tory-led coalition government. While this scandal,
they were said to be rebuilt by Labour, but then they scrapped under the Tories. And did Labour do anything about it? No, they didn't probably say anything about it.
Can't be legitimately entirely blamed on Sunak. There are some legitimate arguments that the Conservatives didn't do enough to prevent it. Now, these two reasons have widely precipitated this 5-point widening between Sunak's Conservatives and Starmer's Labour. But it actually...
This 5-point widening, oh, look. He's been huffing gas in the gas factory again. He looks like he's off in the world of it. He does look high. I mean, these guys, they must know that there's no way they're going to be held to account. And he's just an actor. He's just going to say all of this stuff. So it doesn't matter anyway.
It's worse for Sunak, as the polling on government competence has actually worsened too. At the beginning of September...
competence. Look at this, though. Because it's a false dichotomy. Ignore the rest, right? Ignore the rest. This is really interesting, and this is really telling. So look at these jolts. Every time that the Tories go down, Labour goes up, yeah? Because you've got really just two parties that are likely to take power. And you get to the end of this, the school crisis, and look at this sudden, and this is in a certain part, and this is like trust in a certain part of government policies. And the rise is equivalent, both up and down. The rise, because they're just swapping sides, and those swaps happen all of the time. But it's not real. It's not. Just because and this is the point, just because the blue line that goes down to 15% is because Conservatives are inept. does not mean that Labour are any less inept. It means they're the only other choice, and so they go up at the same rate as the Conservatives drop. But it does not mean they'll handle it better or do it better, because if they were really responsible, then they would have argued for the rebuilding of the schools all the way through all of the terms of Cameron and everything else. But they haven't been doing much of that, have they? Maybe they've argued for a little bit. I'm not completely. I don't know. There's got to be some MPs who address concerns, but it has not been taken up as policy for either a cabinet or a shadow cabinet. Now look at that. Look at that. It is just a false dichotomy. Because the Conservatives are bad does not mean the Labour's good. So those lines going down don't mean that line going up is good. It just means the support is that the people who vote are offered that false dichotomy, and they have to choose one over the other. So when they choose one as being bad, the other automatically goes up, but does not make them good. It's like being found not guilty doesn't make you innocent.
Remember, 21% more people thought that the government was incompetent than competent. But this has since increased to a 39-point gap. Perhaps the worst news for Sunak, though, is that his own personal approval rating is also dropping. At the beginning of September, it was...
I mean, look at this. Look at this approval rating. With this approval rating, so you had 60% approval, right? Okay. First of all, the 60% approval, I think, is a complete lie. That's a complete lie. And then they've gone through furlough scheme begins, furlough scheme ends, and then there's a sharp drop, and then the spring statement, and boom, drops off a cliff. Met finds Sunak over Partygate is right at the bottom, and then it goes up a little bit, and then they show later on they're showing controversy over Gavin and it going down. This looks very suspicious. All of this looks very suspicious. Like that's exactly what anybody could have expected to happen. So if you can predict that, then why would you put him into power if that's what's going to happen? Because you want the change of guard, because it makes your politics, the whole political system, seem legitimate.
Was already at a pretty terrible negative 12%, but this has dropped even further to negative 21%. The point here is that the Tories already had terrible polling, and that's only got worse.
Oh, another shot of that aerated concrete. Whoa, it looks pretty sexy, though. That could fall on a kid's head at any moment. Whoa.
Thanks to the RAAC scandal.
What about those pipes?
So it's reasonable to question, then, whether this worsening polling rating could affect Sunak's position as Prime Minister. Here in the UK, yes, the leader of the largest party is invited to form
What type of handshake was that? Can we go back a little bit? Look, she doesn't want to go close to King Charles III, and King Charles III looks like he's trying to keep away from her. She should probably have curtsied.
UK, the leader of the largest party is invited to form...
He pulls her close and put his hand on her, and she's like, "Oh, finally, Charles. You've showed me your true sign. Do you want to see my bits, and show me your pork market, if you know what I mean?"
A government by the monarch. As such, this individual can only be asked to become Prime Minister if they are the leader. And if they're ousted as leader, then they're also ousted as Prime Minister. This means that the largest political party has a lot of power, as they can effectively decide who becomes the Prime Minister and for how long.
Which is, of course, why the whole system is a fucking sham. You look at it, you got Truss. If you get Liz Truss coming in, you go, how the hell would that happen? Because no one in their right mind, are like a majority of the population, I won't say no one, because obviously Tory hustings, those people are in a fucking world of their own, so they don't understand. Same as Labour stuff as well. They're all off in a world of their own. But in the majority, no one would have voted Liz Truss in as Prime Minister ever in a million years. So she gets in as Prime Minister, system's broken. No one would have voted Sunak in to power. No one on earth. No, not before. But he gets into power. So the system is corrupt. It's defunct. It can be manipulated. Oh, someone comes in, false crisis. They accuse him of something. You trial by media, just like with Boris Johnson, and soon he's ousted. And then you can put in whoever can. You can put in all of the people who are going to be scapegoats.
Right now, and for the last 13 years, the Conservatives have been in power. And
oh my God, these disgusting people. That's four young global leaders and the daughter of a serial killer. There you go. The daughter of a serial killer. Sorry, that went too far. The daughter of someone who worked with a serial killer. That's going a bit too far. A priest. That's a bit dodgy. Worked in the same area where Canon Peter Paul was. That was King Charles's mate who molested all of those young people. And her father worked alongside John Bodkin Adams, the famous serial killer who killed over 130 people by giving them lethal injections after they put him into their will. And then he was covered up by the state, which is a fantastic thing, isn't it? Always the NHS had just been created. Laura Kuenssberg's grandfather, Eckhard von Kuenssberg, who went to the same school as Prince Philip, Queen Elizabeth's husband, was one of the people who founded the NHS. When the NHS was founded, well, it was on rocky ground, and afterwards, Theresa May's father had been working with John Bodkin Adams. Well, when the John Bodkin Adams thing came out, it put a lot of pressure on people on the NHS, so they had to cover up. So that's four young global leaders, and daughter of a accomplice of a serial killer. He's an accomplice. That's a bit rude, but I think he's accomplice of a cover-up, you see, because basically afterwards he got put as vicar of Enstone. He had a short stint in between, but he got made vicar of Enstone, which was one of the main, like, in the heart of the establishment, Oxford. That was a big deal. And so he got rewarded for not saying anything about the Bodkin Adams stuff. Bodkin Adams eventually he got told off for some prescriptions instead of done for 130 plus murders, and then he was able to become a doctor again in about 10-15 years. Terrible stuff. Well, that's what corruption looks like.
To have this privilege. So the only realistic way to get rid of Sunak is if Tory MPs decide that they want a new leader, and therefore a new Prime Minister.
Yeah, there is no way. Come on. If they kicked Sunak out and they have a third unelected by the actual British people leader, I think that would be pushing this current system to change in a way that they don't want to do.
Now, there's actually already been a bit of movement on this. A couple of weeks ago, as Parliament resumed after their summer recess, there was talk from government insiders that some Tory MPs had submitted letters of no confidence in Rishi Sunak. And this is very important, because to trigger a formal vote of no confidence...
Rishi Sunak is also realigning and having to because of pressure from everywhere, not just like they say, Keir Starmer's making him realign, but it's bullshit. It's everywhere to realign with the EU. And that's going to piss some of the Tories off as well.
At least 15% of Tory MPs need to pen such letters. But as the Tories currently have 352 MPs, this means that at least 53 letters will need to be written and submitted.
53 isn't a lot if you get a little bit of a bad story one week.
For this to happen. If that threshold were to be met, though, and if Sunak were to lose a subsequent no-confidence vote, then a leadership election would be called. And the winner would automatically...
I was gonna say surely an emoji or some Microsoft art should go on there. Some clip art should get put on there. And they put the crown on there. Could lead another leadership election. Do you reckon this kid is left school?
Become Prime Minister, as happened with both Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak. Now, right now, it's not clear how...
That worked out well for them, didn't it?
Many of these letters have been written, although it's likely a very small number.
Bit. That last video probably cost them about 150 to use the rights of a letter writing.
And we can say that with some confidence, because in the past, when votes of no confidence...
This isn't, I think this is 1922 committee, so this is the Tory inside, and this is the head, the person who's speaking, looking at I can't remember his name. But he is the head of the 1922 committee at the moment, and I think they're replaying the Boris Johnson one.
Have been triggered. There's been huge amounts of speculation in the days beforehand about when the threshold will be breached. Right now, though, we only have a single report, so it seems reasonable to assume that very few letters have actually been sent in.
No shit.
And to be fair, this is sort of understandable. While Sunak isn't doing particularly well and is on track for an overwhelming defeat at the next general election, replacing him would likely only make things worse for the Tories.
Yeah, okay, right. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? I tell you, they'd have to if they wanted a leader that could get out of the pick they got. You see all of those MPs, what they were like 350 or something like that MPs. Out of all of those MPs, there is no one there that the British people want. They're going to have to do the obvious thing. They're going to have to reanimate the corpse of Jimmy Savile. He's going to be popular than any of these MPs.
The Conservatives' reputation is currently in tatters thanks to the short-lived Truss premiership and the various scandals of the Johnson government. In fact, the Tory party was close to tearing itself apart in both cases.
It was close to tearing itself apart, but that's because they're trying to do that to some extent. They're trying to take if you've got smaller entities, they're easier to control.
And one of the things that Sunak was tasked with...
Look at that walk. It walks like a banker. Eventually, he's going to have an arch there. That copper behind him is massive. He's like 6'6".
As a leader, is healing that divide. Sure, he might not be presiding over particularly good polling, but given the chaos that immediately preceded his premiership, it's doubtful that many people could have actually dragged Tory polling back above Labour. And while anyone would have failed at that, he has largely succeeded in stopping the public blue-on-blue infighting.
Oh, is he? Has he stopped the public? Well, why are you having this conversation, you dimwit? Because this is exactly what's happening and you're explaining it.
Which is certainly a good thing. Replacing him, though, would only restart this fighting.
Which is certainly a good thing. It's like they're Tories. The TLDR is Tories lick dick relentlessly news. I tell you.
And make the Conservative Party look even less electable to a general public that already don't view them all that favourable. As grim as it may be for Tory MPs, then, the question they might be asking themselves right now is whether it's worth
is how much cock can I take? Oh, no, would it be worth it?
Toppling Sunak and installing a new Prime Minister if the best case outcome is slightly improved polling and the worst case outcome is total oblivion at the next general election.
That's not going to happen. No, they do this. Again. False dichotomy proven in that perfect, slightly better. It might get slightly better polling, but it'll be the end of the Tory party completely. That's a false dichotomy. It won't be the end of the Tory party. Don't be fucking silly. It won't be. It just won't be. It's got too much power. It's got too much hold, and the likelihood is they would lose or they would lose. This is what you're really saying. Slightly better polling and end of Tory party should replace with they lose or they lose. So balance that up. Then that makes sense why they probably don't want to do anything. Slightly better polling. End of the Tory party forever. Dramatic Tories lick dick relentlessly news propaganda.
Oblivion at the next general election. And as such, many Tory MPs might conclude that it just isn't worth doing it all over again. So, despite his worsening polling, Rishi Sunak is almost certainly safe to fight another day, and then go on to fight in his first, and if the polls are to be believed, last general election as Prime Minister.
This kid, I swear to God, feels like Tory, man.
Now, you just spent around 8 minutes watching a video to help you learn more about the world around you. And that feels good, right? Well, that's the feeling you get.
What? Watching a video about the Tory leadership contest in no way made me feel good. It all made me feel yucky. So while this guy's about to go off and advertise their sponsors, no, did that make you feel good? No, it didn't. It made me feel like dirty inside, made me feel bad, made me feel like I was being rogered by a Tory spin.